South West Slack meeting is open to the public. Warm welcome to all of you. My name is Councillor Andrew Sanger. I'm the chair of the South West Slack. Before I ask other councillors to introduce themselves, I will hand over to the committee clerk to read out the housekeeping arrangements.
Thank you very much, Chair. Before we start, there's just a few housekeeping arrangements to mention. Please can I request that mobile telephones and other such equipment are switched to silent mode so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. There is no fire test planned for today. If there is an emergency evacuation, please take instructions from the council staff present, and the assembly point is the car park. The toilet facilities are situated back through the bar. The meeting today is open to the public and will be streamed live and for subsequent broadcast via the Council's website. You should also be aware that the Council is a data controller under the Data Protection Act. Data collected during this webcast will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policy. By entering the meeting room in person or online, you are consenting to be filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we've not got our regular nameplates, so I'll have to go round the table and get the people on the top table to introduce themselves. So, let's say, I'm Councillor Andrew Sanger. I'm a councillor in Forward Ward.
Tanya Bustamante, South West Slack Manager.
Councillor Colin Ross, Door and Totley Ward.
Councillor Joe Otten, Door and Totley Ward.
Councillor Minesh Parrott, Crooks and Crosspool Ward.
Councillor Ruth Milson, Crooks and Crosspool Ward.
Councillor Tim Huggan, Crooks and Crosspool Ward, and Vice Chair Lack, I think.
John Turner, Democratic Services.
Cliff Woodcraft, Councillor for Fulwood.
Sue Alston, Councillor for Fulwood.
Sheffield Mohammed Ecclesall.
Barbara Masters, Councillor for Ecclesall.
Roger Davison, Councillor for Ecclesall.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Before we proceed with the agenda, I'd like to explain how the meeting will work. We've got a little bit of formal business of apologies, declarations and minutes. Then we have public questions and answers for 30 minutes. We've received some in advance. There may be some time for one or two questions from the floor if we are quick and brief with our answers. We then move to the report from what we have spent money on in 22-23, which Tanya will present, and then we will just reflect on the community plan and the progress we made over the last 12 months. And then the final part of the meeting, interactive breakout session, to collect your views and feedback. And I'm hoping that we have a good 45-50 minutes in terms of your views, because I don't think we can sort of stay still, and I don't think the LAC works with just sort of the councillors and the LAC team involved in terms of setting the community plans. Are really keen that we have a good amount of time for the table work at the end. Okay, so item 2, any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Martin Smith.
Thank you. Item 3, exclusion of public and press.
No items, Chair.
Excellent. Item 4, declaration of interest. Any members wish to declare an interest in any of the items of business on the agenda? No, thank you very much. Okay, item 5, minutes of the previous meeting. To approve as a correct record the minutes of our last public meeting on the 10th of January. Can I have a proposal? So, second? Yeah. Okay, can we agree those? Thank you very much. Right. Item 6, public questions and petitions. We have not received any petitions, but we have received some public questions. So I will ask those in attendance who put out in public questions, invite them to address the committee with their questions in turn. Can you, I'm just looking, which mic do they go to? Sorry, there's a roving mic. A roving mic will be brought to you. Please clearly state your name And can you try and be as brief as possible? I know some of the questions are quite long. We will try and be brief in our answers as well. We will make sure that everybody gets a full written answer as well. Okay, so the first question I have is from, I've got 2 questions from Paul May. Paul, if you would like to do both questions at the same time.
I'm not allowed to hold it, obviously. Okay, 2 questions. The previous LAC meeting highlighted the fact that some residents are struggling financially due to the cost of living crisis. There are some funds available from a charity called the Ecclesall BLO Poor's Land Charity. These were designed for the poor of pensionable age in Ecclesall. At present, any pensioner can receive money. Can the LAC help to promote a system that will ensure these funds get to those who it is aimed at? And one of the councillors has been, maybe still is, a trustee of that group. That's the first question. Second, under the traffic and parking section of the LAC Delivery Plan Priority 13B focuses on inappropriate parking. Has the action taken place, and what are the outcomes? I.e. identifying areas with parking problems and agree the number of patrols needed by parking services officers. Specifically, has the number of fixed penalty notices increased? And has the evaluation of the Operation Park Safe been undertaken? If so, what are the results? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've got 2 answers. I'm going to do them in reverse order, if that's okay. So I'll reply to the second question. So you're absolutely right that inappropriate parking was something we had in our community plan. We looked at reports in general made in the area, and we found it very difficult to identify particular hotspots that were not already in the scheduled rotation area for parking enforcement services. We've received individual reports through the LAC in relation to inappropriate parking and have coordinated with parking services who have responded. To tackle the theme of idling engines, particularly around schools, we've responded to resident and council requests and installed an additional 6 no idling signs in the area. In terms of Operation Park Safe, we volunteered for the South West to be the pilot area for the whole of Sheffield. Inspector Kevin Smith from South Yorkshire Police reports that they have had around 600 referrals to date. He has written an update on the status of the project. The police take action in about 83% of cases, so around 450 prosecutions in the last 9 months. He has completed on the costs and benefits of the operation and submitted to senior police leadership for their consideration. Before it can be rolled out on a wider basis, there needs to be a plan about how the IT infrastructure that would be necessary for wider adoption and the best method of providing the resources that would be required to process offences. There would also be a requirement for initial and ongoing training to ensure that the service was consistent and decision making was consistent with legislation, policy and case law. So I think in summary, it was something residents wanted as a priority. We've made some progress. It's still on our agenda. The police, it's been referred to senior police officers. We will be working both with Inspector Smith and other police colleagues in terms of taking Operation Park Safe forward, but we'll also take the wider issue of inappropriate parking forward into the next year. So that's the answer to that question. Councillor Sheffield Mohammed, can you give an answer to number 1?
I'm going to be much briefer. I mean, although it's called Ecclesall Below, actually it goes all the way down Sharrow Lane. John, I think the boundary of, I don't know if Paul, have you ever had the kind of documents that the council have, which shows that it covers more than just Ecclesall? Actually, it's not all of Ecclesall either. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a good job John's here because John is the officer that helps us administrate it. We get about £6,000 to £7,000 regularly, don't we, from the investment? And what tends to happen is we look at the number of pensioners that we have within that area, and we decide whether it's going to be £10, £15, £20, whatever it is, and then we annually distribute that money. We also give a couple of £100 to the local vicar in Ecclesall to basically give out discreetly to anyone that comes to their attention that requires it. It is quite a historic fund, and that's how it's been for a long time. If we were to change it, there will be an admin cost involved to kind of start to means test people, etc. Don't know how much that would cost and what would we get out of it, but I don't know if, John, if you want to mention anything else that I've missed out.
No, just to highlight the fact that the costs and the bureaucratic administration involved would be quite heavy, basically. So that's the line from the trustees' solicitors.
Okay, so we'll make sure that Mr. May gets a full answer, because we've clearly got some information here that's more extensive than that's just been given. So we'll make sure that you get the full answer, and it'll be put on the website.
I mean, sorry, Andy, just to deal with the cost of living, because I know this has been an issue on this for a while, that part of the council budget setting process, the thing that was agreed cross-party, would be a ring-fenced amount of £400,000 across the city, but linked to indices of multiple deprivation. I don't know what the amount we're going to get yet, but there will be that bit of money. I suspect it'll be a lot more than this amount that we'll be able to use. So rest assured that the cost of living issue, that's quite a priority for us. We had a good debate on this last time. The last meeting is going to be dealt with, and I've just come out of a meeting with the leader at council, talking to the citizen advice about how we can actually, going forward in the next this financial year that's coming up, how we deal with cost of living and how we can support those most in need across the city.
Okay, well, I'll take it back to Tanya myself, and Tanya will look at the answer we've been given from legal services and continue the dialogue. Thank you. Next question is from Viv Lockwood.
Thank you. I'm Viv Lockwood. I'm secretary of the Banner Cross Neighbourhood Group. I'm here with my friends Russell Letch, who's our vice chair, and Professor Ian Woodward, who's our chair of the group. For many years, we've been trying very hard to get the council to take us seriously when we talk about the traffic hazards at Banner Cross. It's an area that's getting busier and busier all the time. We've made many representations, and twice we've appeared at committee meetings of Transport Department, of the Highways and Planning Department, more recently on a Zoom meeting where we described the actual hazards that we see as most dangerous. I spoke, presenting the case, about the pedestrian crossing, if you can call it that, at the bottom of Salter Lane, the dreadful junction as Breakout Session Road comes out into Ecclesall Road South, and other hazards within the area. Councillor Masters spoke as well on the Zoom meeting. It came to the meeting, the only councillor who actually said anything was Councillor Davison, and acknowledged how difficult a junction it is at Brinkefedge Road into Ecclesall Road South. We keep coming up against a brick wall, and the brick wall is within the Transport Officers Department, and it's to do with the way they calculate problems and hazards within areas. And basically it boils down to, have there been enough accidents there? Well, the other day, about 3 weeks ago, we had another one. from just outside Professor Woodward's front door. Another smash. Now this is very interesting, this one, because it was at a busy time of day and it was also obviously causing confusion in the area with the traffic, so the police were called. However, nobody was actually injured in this, and this makes a difference. I won't go on, Chair, honestly, but the difference is the way that these things are calculated, because it may be that that accident, because the police was called, possibly might appear on one database used by the highways people. But there is another database, and this one says this, if you'll forgive me just reading it out. With regards to road collision data, it is a legal requirement to provide the Department for Transport with Stats 19 data for all road collisions where someone has sustained an injury. This data is collected by the police and shared with local authorities. In the case of South Yorkshire Police, there is a national system called CRASH. The CRASH data is uploaded into a system called AXMAP, which each of the 4 South Yorkshire local authorities use to search for and analyse local recorded injury collision data. We have no access to any data that involves near misses or collisions that do not result in a person sustaining injury, even when there is damage to vehicles, street furniture, walls, etc. So we have a situation where that particular junction is getting busier and busier, and since Archer Lane was closed, it's now horrendous there. As people living in the area, the residents, every one of them, like my 2 colleagues, will testify. My question is, how do we get officers from the Transport Department to take us seriously when we say, will you please send somebody out to spend a little bit of time with us looking at the actual dangers that there are now at that junction so that you can see for yourself instead of sitting behind a computer screen and just pressing a button. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Masters?
Thank you, Andy. I mean, Viv, you know what I've been doing. I've been raising this issue repeatedly, and especially since the low traffic neighbourhood at Nether Edge has been implemented, because that's caused a huge amount of displacement. And I have been assured by the officers that they will now start monitoring the data, not just at that junction, at Carter Knoll. I've also highlighted the issues with Gisborne Road and with Tullibardine and with Ringing Low, because there's just no safe crossing anywhere for a pedestrian. They are aware of the issues. Everything I've raised in the past, like possible remedies, they've always come back to say, this isn't possible in this location. But I think now, if they do actually look at data, then it's going to change the picture, because everything's got to be data-driven, and basically that's how I've got movement in the past. Now, what I can say is that there's going to be some feedback from residents to the Nether Edge low traffic neighbourhood, and I would strongly urge anybody who's got the opportunity to feed back into that as part of the evaluation of the scheme to do that and mention it, because the officers do take note of all the comments. And I just cannot emphasise enough, have your say. There will be records made, numbers accounted, and then maybe eventually we will get something done. It's not easy simply because of the proximity of Salter Lane to that junction, but they have acknowledged that there is an issue now. They promised me that they will look at monitoring data, not, as I say, not just for there, but I've also asked for monitoring of traffic that comes from the further suburbs and out of town that use the arterial roads now, because they're coming off Abbeydale Road much earlier than they would have done before and funnelling down Ecclesall Road South, which is exacerbating the problem. And they've accepted that, and they've said they are going to look at monitoring in 4 different locations, including that one. So if you get the chance to contribute to the consultation, please do so. That's got to be the start. Thank you.
Okay, if I could just add two things to that answer. Firstly, from a LAC chair's perspective, because we as 7 LAC chairs across the city have raised the issue of how we get more involved in terms of local highway schemes, and we did get senior highways officer at our meeting last week. So in next year's budget, it's a next council year, there will be more opportunities for some very small highway schemes for there to be more involvement of the LAC. So that doesn't, no promise in terms of this particular scheme, but there will be more opportunities. Secondly, we've asked for the situation at the moment where highways is a wholly traded service, so calling a highways officer out, another department of the council has to pay for it. So we are, as LACs, we are trying to say that's not good enough. From perspective of 84 councillors, we need to have a way of working better with highways, some of these long-standing problems. So that would be my answer as a LAC chair, but obviously wearing my third hat, as it were, in terms of member of transport, regeneration and climate, we have done two things. One is we pass some more money down for local schemes, so LACs will have an opportunity to get involved in local schemes. But secondly, both the Department for Transport and the South Yorkshire Mayoral Authority have identified the A625 Ecclesall Road as an area of interest. And so there has been the start of a consultation in terms of what the council does from Moore Street roundabout to Dormore Inn, and everywhere in between. I think the challenge for you, Mr Lockwood, is there's quite a lot of junctions in that stretch of road. So Ecclesall Road is a really important area, and the bit of Ecclesall Road and Ecclesall Road South that goes through the South West LAC is really important to this LAC. We will take on board your comments, and we will work with our colleagues in both Central LAC and South LAC, because they are also involved. It's clearly the solution. The solution on Ecclesall Road is not going to be solved just by South West LAC. It may be that over the next year or two, we can do something in terms of the particular points you've raised. But thank you very much for the question. Okay, the next question is from Tim Lewis.
Thank you. Is that audible? Okay, my questions are about the Crooks low traffic neighbourhood. I think that has been extended and is now due to end in March. And there will be at that point a review. So what I would like to know is, at the moment this is a formal review by the Council's Transport, Regeneration and Climate Change Committee. I would like to know what public involvement there will be in that review, what engagement there will be with the public, because that looks to me like the Council marking its own homework. So it would be very nice to have something that is either that has greater accountability, transparency and democracy about it. I'd also know, because the Council claims to have collected data, Council officers, to support its low traffic neighbourhood, when will that be published? When will the general public, the people who've had to put up with this, be able to see it? The third question is a very specific one about Springvale Road. Councillors for Crooks and Cross Pool will remember that I wrote to them on October the 15th, sending them photographs of a road traffic incident which was caused directly by the one-way section of Springvale Road. Delivery had traffic on the road and a car. You all photographs, you were to respond. And you said that railroad was already both in terms of effective going non-compliance with the compliance. I went straight through. So fine road, but it's hugely dangerous, except what I'm afraid. Questions. Accountability. Publishing is about measure.
Tim, for questions or that, you know, that to spend so much time on them because what bothers me closures and got rid of those. That one way was troublesome and redundant without the diagonal closures that complement it in the scheme. So that is scheduled for removal, and that request has been made of Amy. We're waiting because it's complicated to remove it because they have to take the not just take the signs down but remove all the lining as well. So we are waiting on a date for that, but it's hopefully sooner rather than later that is going to be removed. It still has to go through the formal process at the end of being decided upon, but it seems exceptionally unlikely that it would come back by any decision of the Transport Committee. And just to say as well that there will be a further point of engagement, which I've requested, between now and the final decision. There will be another point of public engagement. Don't know what form that will take yet, whether it's a public meeting or what. We'll try and work out the best form to give enough people a chance to have their say. But any comments, that consultation is finished formally, but comments that come in are still being considered. And as Councillor Sanger said, you know, we hear you and we make sure that everything's taken forward to the right committee and given proper consideration. So it's always still worth putting your comments in right up to the last minute. And they'll all be considered along with everything else in the consultation. So thanks for bringing those in. About Melbourne Road, getting rid of the one-way will alleviate that ring around Melbourne Road that we're very aware of, and hopefully there won't be any more accidents. Although once we've removed the infrastructure, if people still drive badly, then it's nothing to do with the active neighbourhood, it's to do with driving badly. But anyway, I appreciate you coming, and I'm happy to talk more if you want to.
I think Ruth has mostly answered what I was going to say. I think on your point about the data collected by the council in terms of the low traffic neighbourhood, I completely agree that needs to be published. I think we haven't, any of us, formally seen any data either, so, you know, particularly keen for councillors to see it as well as residents. It's something we will be pushing for any decision to be made. You know, there needs to be a full and thorough review of everything that's happening, and that obviously includes data and a scientific evidence base as well.
Okay, Tim.
It was always going to happen there, going up Melbourne Road and diverting traffic up that way. When I arrived, and I see it constantly when I'm walking up and down Springvale Road. If they think they can drive through, they do, straight through. And the funny thing was, on that day, was because people wearing Visi jackets, the council officers, you'd see cars going down there, and then suddenly they think that there was some sort of law enforcement, and then they would put the brakes on and then turn up Melbourne Road on that day. And so that's not good enough. On the question of public engagement, it's something I've constantly asked for, and it needs to be robust, because if we're going to look at any other low traffic neighbourhoods anywhere else, the thing that I asked for before it even happened and was assured by the cabinet member at the time that there'd be a robust public engagement, and that did not happen. We were also promised when we had our series of meetings last year that we'd have one sooner than we have had, which hasn't happened. So I fear that it may be councillors up marking their own homework if we don't get it right and ask the public, what members of the public, the residents of the area, what they thought of it, and what's gone right, what's gone wrong. Because as far as I can see now, in that section between Heavygate Road and Springvale Road, there's little left of the low traffic neighbourhood scheme anyway, and so it was always going to be the case in that area where there was little traffic anyway during the day. At least most of the people who were going into those streets were residents. That really there should have been a bit more consultation beforehand to make sure that that whether it was the right place to do a trial in that section. And I know the council officers themselves have said, did they try and do too big an area? Because that was the other thing. And whether it would have been better to do it in a slightly smaller area so that we could really see if we could work on solutions in other areas that were slightly smaller. Because this is always going to happen.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all very much. Okay. The next question is from Amanda Baxter. Is Amanda Baxter here, or anybody to ask her question? We'll get an answer to her. It's about inappropriate parking in Crooks area and bins at the top of Muirhouse Road. So I'll make sure that Amanda gets an answer. Are you okay?
Yeah. No.
Are you okay? Minesh, do you want to take over?
I was just going to say, if we could add to the written answer that's been provided, get out of my swimming pool here. If we could add. Hello. About a note about Park Safe. That's already been mentioned in another question that's missing from the thing. So if we can send her the details about that, and also just to say that we'll be asking for extra patrols from the police in the specific locations that she's mentioned. I don't think that's mentioned in the reply either. I'll just mop myself up now.
No, sorry. Sorry, so what's happened is that we've had advance notice of some questions. We've had advance notice of this question. The lady is not here to ask the question. However, we've been given an answer by highways officers, and colleagues wanted to add to the answer that she was going to get the written answer. So I know it's a little bit confusing.
Okay, so can we ask MDs for this meeting hear that question and put to or add to that question?
Well,
there's no record.
Yeah, there will be. I said there will be a record in the next set of minutes. We're still learning in terms of a process in terms of public questions. So what we're trying to do is we're having 30 minutes public questions and answers, and we asked for questions in advance. We're going for the questions in advance. That's one of the questions in advance. We had an answer, but my colleague felt that she needed to give a better answer than the one she was given.
That's fully understandable. My question there is, can you elaborate on the question that was asked so that we can hear it, so that it's not potentially asked again? And then secondly, can I ask Councillor to potentially expand on what she said with respect to Park Safe? Because I know it's only happening in the northwest at the moment, and I've requested the police. I've requested directly to the inspector of the police to ask whether or not it's going to be a thing in the southwest as well.
Yeah, right. Sorry, sir. I think you arrived a little late. We'd already answered the question about Park Safe. I'll just give that answer again, which was Councillor Ruth Milson has just said we need to make sure it's included. So the northwest area of the police includes the southwest area of the council. So that's quite confusing, but it's that we've got different boundaries. So Inspector Kevin Smith is an inspector of Suffolk Yorkshire Police who covers the northwest. That does include Crooks and Crosspool and Forward wards. And he has said, well, I'm just going to repeat the same word I said, but we've had 600 referrals to date. Action in about 83% of cases, 450 prosecutions in the last 9 months, and he's submitted a report to his senior leadership, and we're waiting for them to respond. So it's something we are really keen to pursue, but it's very much with police senior leadership at the moment. Okay. It was part of our community plan that we wanted to tackle inappropriate parking. So, we're going to follow this up with the police, and I say not only with Inspector Kevin Smith, but also with more senior representatives of South Yorkshire Police. So we will take your comments on board. Okay. Oh, okay. I mean, it's really important. It's absolutely important. Yeah. No, absolutely understood that. Okay, can we move on? The next question I've got is from Amanda Davey. Amanda Davey, here you are. Can you?
So she asked me if I would read the question for you. Is that permitted?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. She asks, can you tell us what the LAC budget is for the next year, i.e. 23-24? And will LACs be given any additional powers or responsibilities? And will there be any additional funding to cover these? Thank you.
Okay. Well, clearly the council is no overall control, and those of us who don't sit on finance subcommittee don't really know the full excitement that goes on. But we've managed to mainstream the funding of the officer team, so that carries on. And then at Budget Council, we managed to get a cross-party budget amendment through, so there is some money. So an amendment was moved at Budget Council, which reaffirmed commitment to further devolving power away from the Town Hall. Believes that routing service delivery at local level and giving great voice to communities will benefit all of Sheffield and support the workload of the committee system, and that resolved that alongside service redesign, additional spending amounting to £25,000 per ward, overseen by ward councillors, would be part of the 23-24 budget. And then, as we've heard earlier, resolved to put an additional £400,000 into the LAC. So we've been allocated £100,000 for next year, which is the same as this year, but obviously without the inflation increase. And so there's 400k that we're working through what we can do with that. But clearly, quite rightly, that's being apportioned across the city based on instances of multiple deprivation. So where we are is we have less than half the money we had in 2012-13 in absolute terms. So in real terms, a third of the money we had in 12-13. In 12-13, we had devolved powers in terms of parks, libraries, street scene. We have none of those. What we have got, as I say, is a commitment from Highways. So in those days we had a dedicated Highways office. Now we have got a commitment from Director of Highways that they will work with us. So we're making some progress, and it's really good that we've got a cross-party amendment agreed at budget, and that we've got some money so that we can have a new community plan. That's one of the reasons why on item 9 I want to get some public engagement in that, so that we don't just have a community plan that was agreed back last year, that we've actually learned from the last 18 months. Sorry, did I see another hand?
No, you've answered it.
Okay. So I hope that answered the question. So the good news is we've got a similar sort of amount of money to last year. We've got a few extra powers. We've got a bit more commitment from Highways, and it's an ongoing work in progress. Okay. I don't think I've had any other questions. So I've got a few minutes. So oh gosh, lots of hands. Okay. So gentleman at the front.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors, officers. Thank you for this opportunity. I have one very short question you'll be pleased to hear. It's a question on the theme of the quality of governance of our city, so it therefore applies to all LACs. It's a cross-city issue. And I thought that before PERDA commences, councillors here would relish the opportunity to give a view, and only a very short statement is requested, on this matter. I'll read the short question. In the context of the excoriating and utterly damning Lowcock inquiry report, please would each of the councillors here, on the record, briefly express confidence, or otherwise, in the leader of the council and the finance co-chair continuing as councillors or in their current positions of responsibility. Please, I know the time is short, Chair, so only a very short answer is requested from each councillor. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I actually haven't got time for 12 answers, so does anybody want to answer? Councillor Olsen. So, Councillor Olsen.
I just want to say, yes, I quite agree with the question. I did call at the Waste and Street Scene Committee on Wednesday for Councillor Lodge and Councillor Fox to resign. Clearly, there are things in the report which we need to accept, which the Council does accept, to be fair. But the question of who leads the Council when there are members of the Council who are implicated in misleading the public and the courts and their own independent tree panel, and that we learned that the Council, far from being forced into what it was doing with the trees, was pushing forward in refusing offers from Amy to compromise, refusing offers from Amy to pause the programme, and was considering a judicial review of the police to get them to arrest more protesters rather than fewer. So I don't have confidence in them as to carry on.
Okay. Anybody else on that side? Councillor Hogan?
I certainly have no confidence in leadership, having been with the Western Road campaign at various times. The fact that they were doing that people were being arrested at other parts of the city, etc. There was high alert in Western Road. They thought the trees would come down, and what we were being told was not necessarily the truth, shall I say. And so I think the whole of the people who were in the senior leadership at the time should be reflecting on their positions and looking to issue public apologies, as well as resigning those that are still in leadership at the City Council.
That side.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's a lot I could say, and we had a brief chat outside, Russell, and I'm happy to chat more on that basis. It's far easier not to just give a glib answer to a question that demands a certain answer. I won't be asking for resignations, and I prefer to take an attitude to anything like this that is based on, to quote, "He who is without sin should cast the first stone." And I think that, take me seriously, please. I think that there should always be an opportunity for restorative justice rather than, asking for resignation doesn't necessarily lead to the right things. And I think I've seen a lot of change in the time that I've been in the council. We've got a whole new governance system. That was a change that was brought about, rooted in the tree campaigns, which I was a part of as well, and I campaigned for that change. And we're now enacting that change, and I think a lot of people have put a huge amount of effort into making that work, and that should be given some confidence, and that councillors Fox and Lodge have been part of that as well, and are on a different trajectory from the one that's described in that report. So I'm in favour of giving people the chance to prove themselves in a different system, and on the understanding that we are not going back to those times.
Happy to also give an answer. I don't think this is a question that can be answered shortly. So I'm not going to try and do that. I think, the Lowcock report demands, and, Sir Mark Lowcock asked for it to be given serious consideration, be read in full, for people to give considered replies. I don't think a glib answer does help with that. So as someone who was 40... I'd rather not be heckled. I said I'll give a considered reply, and I'm happy to give that. As someone who was, 14 when the contract was signed and that signing process was overseen by a cabinet member on this desk, I don't think there is a need for snap judgment answers, is what I was going to say. And I don't think that benefits any of us. What I do think we need is to embed the Lowcock report into the whole workings of council. I think the principles of it, truth and reconciliation, as recommended by Sir Mark Lowcock, need to be considered in full. I don't think any snap judgment response does anyone any justice. I think it's exactly right that the council leaders and council chief executive, who both signed the report and acted on it, are not on frontline politics, have both stood down, and do not have a role to play in Sheffield anymore. I think that's exactly right, and I think that's where we should be. I think if a council leader from that time was here now, I would call on them to resign. I don't think we should be pointing fingers at individual cabinet members when we've rightly moved away from a cabinet system.
Sorry, sir.
And we've rightly moved away from a cabinet system, which is something I voted for and campaigned for. As someone who was elected 4 years after this dispute ended, I think that's a very good thing to happen. So no, I'm not going to call on them to resign. I think the council is in a much... Okay.
Parrick. I apologise, Parrick. Councillor
Ross. I think that the whole thing was avoidable and very disappointing. I went in with members of the community to various meetings with Councillor Dorr, with proposals, compromises, ways of actually backing out and saving face, all of which were refused. And in fact, what happened at the end was exactly what we were proposing before the debacle of Russell's Road, etc. But entrenched positions were taken. Clearly, councillors Fox and Lodge are not going to resign, but there is an opportunity of the whole of Sheffield to actually force their resignations in the forthcoming elections, and I hope people remember what was happening at that time. But the council could change control of its composition, is what I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just correct? Inference was made that I signed the contract. The contract was signed in 2012. We lost control in 2011. So I'm happy to take responsibilities for anything that I may have done in that 1 year, 2010 to 2011. But to say, we have a report about trust and transparency, and within weeks, days of that report being published, we already see that people are trying to change history. The history was that choices were made. And the only thing I would say is that that sort of behaviour that happened there wasn't just Councillor Lodge and Fox. There was a lot more councillors involved in that. At the moment, the centre of attention is between Councillor Lodge and Fox. But actually, there was other councillors, Julie Doe and her deputy at the time, who happens to be the MP for this area, who happens to be the employer of one of the councillors that spoke earlier, actually, Manesh. If you're going to be honest and transparent, I was subjected to, I would say, bullying and being shouted at and screamed at when a city councillor, not from my party, was thrown out of a council meeting by suggesting that possibly Councillor Lodge may have misled council, because two different answers were provided to a similar question about flexi-pay. Russell and Justin will know this. Yes. And there were demands that Councillor Tier withdrew those comments. When she said, look, it's my opinion, I believe, how can you give two different answers? You may have misled us at the first time or the second time. She was thrown out. At that point, some of these guys were here with me. We simply could not tolerate that, not in a democracy, not in a Western society that, throws out anybody that dissents. I went out. There was a closed council meeting called by senior officers where those councillors were asked to go. I thought that's where the reconciliation would be. And I was greeted by the leader and the deputy at the time. And the deputy led on, you need to apologise for us for walking out. Here's a pre-prepared letter that I insist you sign. And I was told by my deputy at the time, Penny Baker, please go in there and try to build some bridges. And the irony was, I'd just come from a funeral from my community where I live, of someone I really found dear to me. And when my friends and colleagues were at Shire Green, I came to this town hall to sit through this meeting, and I really wanted to walk out of that meeting. And the only thing that stopped me was, this was a meeting about me walking out of a meeting, and it would have been ironic if I went out. And I came out of that meeting thinking, they are not for changing. They are not for changing. Their attitude was to actually crush the tree campaigners. And I'm shocked to learn that they were trying to take the police to court, demanding that they, and I know some of the police officers that were involved in my other life, and I really want to apologise to them because they were put in a very difficult situation by the council, and they are really good police officers. And I remember seeing what they were doing. Sorry, I'm winding up. I have already issued a statement saying that I can't see Councillor Lodge and Fox being able to take this council forward and rebuild and reconcile. But I just wanted to correct the record. I did not sign any contract.
Councillor Alston.
Thank you. I'm going to be very, very brief. I'm just going to say there's a lot in that report that a lot of different people need to learn from. But those individuals who were singled out as specifically having, shall we say, made errors, really do need to both apologise and step down.
Councillor Woodcock.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I'm deeply concerned about these two individuals. I mean, they've made mistakes in the past. They say that they've learned from them. I'm not convinced. I think they could. It's the kind of behaviour that we come to expect, sadly, and I think they should step down.
Sorry. As a clarification, I wasn't implying Councillor Mohammed signed the contract. I was making a point that pointing at cabinet members throughout the duration doesn't do anyone any benefit to Truth and Reconciliation.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Masters. Very short. We need to press on.
Thank you. Just to say that I've written a letter to the Star published about my views, and it was yes, that there's so little trust. It's easy to sort of offer words of apology, but there's no substance behind it, so they should step down.
So I'm gonna take Chair's prerogative and have the final word. Clearly, it's a really important report. It shows lots of lessons for senior officers and the councillors, particularly councillors of the Labour group in 2011 to 2019. And I clearly think that Councillor Fox and Councillor Lodge need to resign. We clearly, as members, are going to come back to those of us who are still here on the 10th of May, and I have no idea whether I will be or not. We'll have another chance at extraordinary in the council. Just to say a few words, I'm happy to add any apologies in terms of my behaviour from 2004 to 2011, saying that it was important that we found a way to have more money for the conditions of our roads, pavements and trees. That was clearly something that Labour and Liberal Democrats worked on together. Happy to apologise for my role in going to government saying, can we have some more money? More than happy to add my apologies to others. I was quite shocked when the problem, after the contract was signed, as you say, in 2012, when Labour taking majority control of the council, how inflexible the service was, and how when Rustlins Road came up, how when we all went as members, whether it's Ecclesall or Forward, to the Labour leadership and asked for flexibility, we were given nothing. And then when this protest got more serious in 2015-16, and we went again, and we were just subjected to a level of intransigence and abuse from the Labour leadership. So I think anybody who served under Councillor Daw on the Cabinet, not as backbencher, because clearly backbenchers don't have much say under the old system, but I think anybody who served under Councillor Daw needs to consider their position. I certainly think Councillor Fox and Councillor Lodge need to resign. So that's my position. And I say I'll be pushing it in terms of other members who served under Councillor Daw's leadership, because it was not a good place, and this report is a very, very strong report. It's a shocking indictment on how Sheffield was run. And as other people have said, we had a referendum, and we've now got a committee system, and hopefully we will never go back to that level where one party has so much control. So that's my position. I think we should move on. Right, okay, last question from Mr. Hodgson.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I got a bit carried away by that, so I forgot what the question was. I can find it, excuse me. Right, so this is a bit downbeat, I'm afraid. Is there any reason why the minutes of the last meeting and the agenda for this meeting are so late in arriving and so difficult to find on the council website? But I had a conversation with Paul on the phone this afternoon, trying to guide us through to find out where it was. Why cannot the agenda and the minutes be emailed to attendees from the last meeting, or more broadly, those on the LAC email list? That's the question.
Very good question. John.
Thank you. Can I just point out I'm not responsible for the council's website. We can take these comments back to the people who are. When you say late, what exactly do you mean by that? I'm sure this agenda will have been published within the required time of 5 clear days. That's all we're required to do, so it will be on the website. I did with Paul, I went through and pointed it out. I must admit it's not the easiest thing to find, but I'm more than happy to send the link to the minutes to Tanya, who will be able to then send it out to participants. As regards difficulty navigating the website, it's a slightly larger issue that I can't really give you an answer on now, I'm afraid.
I've just found your papers in 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just add to that. I mean, clearly, I will ask officers in terms of the website. That's in terms of the minutes. That should have been available earlier. In terms of the agenda, there might be one or two items. Clearly, we have an item. We have one of the items in terms of the committee spend, where I know we only got it sorted sort of 2 weeks in advance rather than a month in advance. I don't know what the delay was. I will try to make sure that the system next year is a little better. These things happen. There was no particular reason why this one should have been late. But yeah, if it was a few days late, then I apologise. I think, as John said, we've cleared the legal hurdle, but it could have been available a few days earlier. So see what we can do next time. Okay, thank you very much. Can we move on very speedily to item 7, report to note the South West LAC spend 22-23. Tanya.
Thank you, Chair. So you can view the finance report starting on page 27 of your meeting information packs. I'm bringing the spending report today to note the funding against the £100,000 budget set to address the local priorities set out for the South West LAC for the year. In the report, you can see the full breakdown of finances set out in the table on pages 30 to 32. If you recall, at the last meeting in January, the LAC agreed that any underspend of funds would be added to the outstanding balance, and then the surplus would be used to fund grants, with priority being given for funding towards activities that help those people impacted by the cost of living crisis. A request was actually included as well at the last meeting that some allocation be made towards measures to safeguarding the parking at Totley Rise Shops on Baslow Road, and this was following 2 accidents at Totley Deli Cafe, which resulted in damage by cars crashing into the building. Just an update on that, the LAC requested officers to explore options, and LAC officers have actually worked with Transport Highway officers involving members as well to identify cost-appropriate measures for the project, but we haven't yet identified the tangible options that we're moving forward with. Sorry, I missed that again. Yeah, of course, yeah. Shall I go back to the beginning, or did you get the beginning bit? Okay. So the report... So the report you can see is on page 27 to page 32, 33, I think, of the information packs. It's just a summary of what's to be noted of that finance report, yeah. No, it's just to summarise the main points, just to state that the breakdown of the finances that have been spent today are on the table, which run from page 30 to 32. And then just a summary of, just to recall that the surplus funds, the decision that was made in January was that the surplus funds would be added to the outstanding balance, and we have funded grants with priority being given to those towards helping people that are impacted by the cost of living crisis. And also just as well to note and clarify that a request was made at the last meeting that some allocation be made from this year's budget towards measures to safeguarding the parking at Totley Rise Shops, Baslow Road. And what happened there was that 2 accidents at Totley Deli Cafe actually resulted in damage by cars crashing into the building. And an update on that is that we are continuing to work with Transport and Highways officers, with members, but appropriate measures haven't yet been defined, so we can't cost it in this year's financial budget. So this is a timescales issue, really, in terms of the time of the year that we're at. But an earmarking of £10,000 has been passed to next year's budget to continue to explore options. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so I don't intend taking a long period of time. Councillor Otten.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to clarify, the point is not to safeguard the parking; it's to safeguard the deli and cafe from vehicles crashing into it. So we had a meeting with transport and members looking at some of the options. It is looking quite difficult, but we hope we'll be able to do something. We are going to have to, I think, talk to the residents again as well, the residents and the businesses, just to put some of the options before them. Yes, I was a little bit unclear from the way the report was written about the kind of passporting of 10,000 to next year. But if you're telling me that's what the report says, then we don't need to amend it. Is that right? I mean, I want to be clear that money is going to be available.
So the earmarking of the 10,000 was related to the theme of transport and highways, where we had a surplus, and we still have a surplus of 10,000, which can be used for the activity, the projects or the solutions that are found, the measures that are found. Anything that is surplus in terms of over and above what.
It's not a surplus, it's an underspend.
Yes. Underspend.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're correct, sir.
Will be put back into the £100,000 into the South West Light budget pot, as it were, for redistribution next year.
I'll be advised by you, Chair, because you gave me a call this morning saying it's not clear. Can you make sure it's clear at the meeting?
Okay, Councillor Perek.
I guess I had a question on that. If for next year we're moving to a system where it's 25k pots for each ward, how does moving £10,000 from this year to next year?
So just to make it clear to everybody, because I think that the problem we've got is that Tanya and I live and breathe this spreadsheet, and everybody else on this table doesn't, let alone the rest of you. So we were given £100,000 last year, but we actually were given it in March 21, but we spent it in the financial year 22-23. We have spent 90,000. We haven't spent 10,000, or this is the underspend. We are saying that this underspend, its first call is Totley Deli and Cafe, which is what we tried to do in January, but we failed to get the wording correct because we didn't have a legal officer present. So we've been pulled back by the legal service and say we need a clear form of words to say we are carrying the £10,000 over to the next financial year. We're going to let the local members speak to highways officers and the public to see if they can find a solution to this problem with up to £10,000. If they can't, the money comes back. If they spend less than £10,000, the rest of the money comes back to us. As Councillor Perek has rightly said, we're not agreeing to spend it indoor and Totley. We're agreeing to spend that money trying to solve this particular issue. Now, what highways have said is that other monies might be available for other projects, so it might be that we don't need to spend it. But what we're doing today is we're agreeing the 90,000 has been spent, and then in terms of this 10,000, we're agreeing to give more time to highways and the Dawn Totley councillors to find a solution. And they'll come back to us in 6 or 9 months' time, having done their best, and saying this is what they've spent, this is what they've allocated, and we've got a solution for Totley Deli and Cafe. So that's what we're agreeing today.
I'm very happy to propose or second that, so it make sure it's formally recorded.
I'm happy to second that. I'm not sure the report or the recommendations say it, but if we can agree with what you've just said, I'm very happy with that.
So colleagues, can we agree the first 2 recommendations, which are in the report, and then can under Councillor Otten and Councillor Ross's proposal of that third thing in terms of the £10,000 for Totley Deli and Cafe to investigate it with highways? Can we all agree with that? Agree. Thank you very much. Quite confusing. Can we, and I accept where we are with the time, can I ask colleagues to be brief? Item 8 is community plan reflection on the year. Sorry. Okay, as I say, we have agreed it, but and I think I was going to say it as the first item of the next one. So what I'll do, sir, is when we start this slide, I will explain it on my bit, and then I'll hand it over to colleagues. So just to remind people, so this is item 8. This is a reflection on the year. So we were set up in March 21. We had our first meeting in September. As the gentleman has just reminded us, we did an online survey in September, which was citywide, an online survey. We then provided paper copies. And then we collated all that information. So the South West got 40% of the responses, and we created a community plan at that time. Clearly, it took until early 22 to agree that community plan, and then we presented it at the public meeting in June. So, in effect, it's taken 2 years from the council setting this up to delivering this first plan, and that's very much why I want to get onto the breakout session, to understand how you, as interested members of the public, want to take the ideas forward. But if we could just go through these slides, so if we could have the next slide. Councillor Woodcraft, do you want to briefly say this and say, if we could, I'm saying to all colleagues, if we get through all this in 10 minutes, that would be helpful. So
right.
No more than 90 seconds each.
Okay, so road safety. We've implemented traffic calming measures through the installation of vehicle-activated signs for each ward. We've got two indoor and Totley, and they're rotated around the locations within the wards. These devices, as well as flashing up the speed, record the data, and data is retrieved from these and shared with councillors to measure the effectiveness. And these locations can be changed on review if need be. We have a collective traffic regulation order for double yellow lines, one set in each ward. You just can't put yellow paint down on the road without a traffic regulation order, and they're very expensive, and so we're doing a collective one. They cost several thousands of pounds. And we are allowed one set of double yellow lines per ward because it's being rationed because the council doesn't have sufficient resource for more. In Crooks and Cross Pool, they're putting them on the junction of Reigate Road and Tapton Crescent Road. In Dorn Totley, the junction of Green Oak Road and Mickley Lane Junction. In Ecclesall, the junction of Knoll Lane and Hoover Avenue. And in Fulwood, by Oakbrook Road roundabout to protect the entry and exit around the central island. There's a South West Lack Area Community Speed Watch group. We work closely with South Yorkshire Police as a pilot area. We're establishing a volunteer-led South West Area Community Speed Watch group supported by the police coordinator. We have a number of volunteers signed up and setting up training days for April and May. We've purchased a speed gun for sole use by the South West Community Speed Watch group, which will provide flexibility when planning operations. And I could add that if used with police support, prosecutions are possible. If without, I think letters can be sent, but no prosecutions. On the subject of active travel...
Sorry, 90 seconds. So, can you draw your answer to close, Councillor?
Sorry? Draw to a close, okay. Active travel supported Crooks Active supported the Crooks Active Travel Scheme. We've got 20 new cycle parking zones across South West area with hoops to put the bikes on so they can be secured. And we've got projects on improved signage and road markings, Quiet Lane and Woodcliff. Crooks and Cross Pool, we're looking at exploring improvements around disabled parking bay signage, a dropped curb on Bentley Lane, and Totley Rise shops you've already heard about.
Councillor Milsom, did you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Chair. Just a little bit about the active travel. I'm not going to go on about it because there's a lot of information on the Connecting Sheffield website. So, and I appreciate not everyone here or watching the webcast will be interested in this. So just to say that the LAC's part in supporting this, as it said that we supported the Crooks Active Travel Scheme. That's mainly that last summer we requested support to put on some public Q&A meetings, because as the infrastructure was being put onto the streets and some of it was very delayed, it was becoming very confusing about how the scheme was actually going to be rolled out. In response to the fact that we were getting our inboxes very full of questions about the whole scheme, we asked for support with these public sessions, to which transport officers came, and that was coordinated by our LAC officers. So appreciate the work that went into supporting that and enabling people to have a better voice in the consultative process of the scheme, which I think we've all highlighted over time was we thought was deficient right from the start. There should have been a lot of that before the scheme was designed and started to be implemented, but we tried to make up for the deficiencies by providing a public forum for people to come and speak and have their questions answered. So apart from that, I won't go on about the actual scheme, but if people do want to know details or have questions, as I said to Mr Lewis earlier, we're looking ahead into the next stages and may well be asking the LAC for further support with more public engagement, if that's the way to do it. But the scheme is being directed by the transport planning officers rather than the LAC. The LAC's just taken a supporting role. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So just to say, I mean, Transport and Highways was 70% of the respondents' replies from the public and 50% of our budget. So it's been the thing that the public has been most interested in. Whether that will be true next year, we don't know. Shall we press on to local environment? Well, Councillor Otten and then Councillor Mustard say a few words.
Thank you. Well, it's been brief to speak to this. I apologise, Chair. The notes for this are 3 times longer than the notes for the previous slide. So
you still only have 90 seconds.
We're going to run a dog fouling campaign using communication materials and support from Keep Britain Tidy, which includes social media. I'm particularly concerned about willow playing fields. We've done a lot of work and had meetings with various parties, FA, parks and so on, to do something there, because it's a shared space between dog walkers and footballers, which is not a great combination. But it's a small part to, we've got more ambitions for there. We're working at solutions to improve bring sites, which for recycling within the area at Redmires. We've got designs approved there, and the supply for textile bank is being sorted out for that location too. Fly tipping, we've got hotspots of Sheep Hill Road and Clough Lane. I know more about the Sheep Hill Road one. I understand we've agreed the proposal, and it's just waiting to be programmed to harden that site. It was a particularly problematic site for fly tipping, not least because tipping would land in a water course, and that just made it more damaging and more difficult to clear up. Friends of groups, we support friends of groups with grants. So they do tremendous work across the city. Volunteers, the lifeblood, I think, of our local environmental service, and certainly in Waste and Street Scene as well. We've just agreed a volunteering strategy to support volunteers in all sorts of ways across the city. Biodiversity, again, working with Parks and Countryside. We have many destination parks and green spaces within the South West, and there is work taking place through the work of Friends of Groups and supported by Parks and Countryside. These include Millhouses Park environmental area, Aincliffe Park. There's plants down the river edge which will introduce colour. Carlton Park, Bingham Park community. I'm racing through these now. Wilson's Field, plug plants. Councillor Barbara's going to talk about that. Totley Hall Park and Dorrec improvements to wildflower areas. I'd also say, again, in Waste and Street Scene, we have a verge strategy now which will allow rewilding of some verges, which will also add to biodiversity, and it's for LACs to kind of to bid into that process. South Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, we're supporting it with partnership projects looking after Redmires, Wyoming Brook, Fox, Hag and Riverlin. And there's also the restoration of the Forge Dam and Bingham Park sports facilities.
So very, very briefly, sir.
With all due respect, this is public. Best time, our time, when you've already asked one question, two questions.
So that's your opinion. I'm keen to, yeah. No, sir. I've said that. So let me answer the point. I want to get through this quickly. I think it's really important, given this is public money that has been spent on behalf of the 70,000 people of the South West, not the 40 or 50 people in this room, that we present back a report so that when we sit for the next half hour looking at what we should be spending the money on next year, that you can reflect on what we have done, whether that was a good use, whether it changes. And I really think this is useful. I agree with you that we need to keep it brief, and I will remind my colleagues we need to keep it brief. But,
it's about providing the information to the people here who have bothered to turn up to provide public consultation that you're requesting from us constantly, that you get that public consultation. Okay. You have the opportunity to send out other public consultations, as you mentioned, in the previous ones, online, all that kind of stuff.
you've made your point, sir. We will continue. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I take your point, but the next item on the agenda is the item you're asking for, which is why we're rushing through this one.
Okay, so I suggest that my colleagues are unbelievably short. Councillor Mustard, do you need to say anything?
No, because Councillor Otton's covered it. Thank you.
Councillor Perret? No. Okay, can we, next slide. So, very briefly, the final thing, which was very much members put in because this was not so much of a priority from the public, but I mean, we put this in. There were a few comments from the public. We put it in. Clearly, the council's working on youth provision. In terms of tackling isolation and loneliness, we've supported 10 groups supported, 7 friendship lunches. We've continued the work on the business network for Crooks and Banner Cross areas, and we have provided some funding support for the S6 food bank and the Grace food banks for South West LAC residents to access food banks. And we've got a little bit about projects in terms of Red Myers travel site and Millhouses Park accessible play equipment. So we felt it was a third strand that we need. At that point, I'll stop this. Got to just briefly go back to item 6, where we didn't actually note the report. We needed to note the second part of the report, which is about making sure that we get written answers in the report. So we note that. And with that, can we move to item 9? Can we have, as I say, the next 35 minutes on tables facilitating how we go forward, how we move the community fund forward, how we move the LAC forward, how we come up with different ways of presenting this to the public, both at public meetings, how we find a more friendly, informal way of working. So with that, can we move to the tables for the next 35 minutes, and then we will close at 9 o'clock. We won't come back here. I'll just say a few words to close it. So can everybody move to the tables, please? Thank you.